So, wait, okay. You're telling me that Exxon knew that climate change was happening due to its products, and it chose to, one, prepare its own facilities for things like sea level rise, and two, spread that it was still a debatable issue so that no public policy would work on it? Really? Ah, great. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beckosphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, in the Beckosphere, we talk about everything relating to the climate crisis. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, then please hit that subscribe button below, click the like, check me out on my socials. And today we are going to talk about how the fossil fuel industries knew that climate change was happening through their own research, and how they, failed to tell the rest of the world about it.
In 2008, the city of Baltimore filed a lawsuit against ExxonMobil, Shell, and 24 other fossil fuel companies, claiming the companies deceived customers for decades about the risks of burning fossil fuels. The suit argues that fossil fuel companies should pay for damages caused by climate change, including property, agricultural, and economic damage from extreme weather events.
Even though cases were filed in state courts, fossil fuel companies led by Chevron pushed to have those cases moved to the Supreme Court, arguing that because fossil fuel industries extracted and sold fossil fuels through government contract, they should be deemed a federal officer. And any case that is brought against the U.S. itself or a federal employee goes straight to the Supreme Court.
Because Baltimore's case is considered a tort suit, which is usually under state jurisdiction, Baltimore moved to bring the suit back to the state courts because the federal court has a history of sending similar suits to the executive and legislative branches to decide. Unusually, the federal courts actually agreed last July that Baltimore's suit should stay in Maryland. In response, the fossil fuel companies argued that because their other claims were attached to the one arguing that they are federal officers, the appellate court should look at all their arguments on the case. This is kind of their way of still keeping the case in the federal hands. Now it's up to the Supreme Court to decide if the appellate court should decide on all the company's claims or just have responded to the federal officer part. Until then, the companies continue to appeal the suits against them, dragging them out for years. In short, the Supreme Court can decide if suing fossil fuel companies is up to the Fed or the states. Most legal experts argue that keeping the suits in state courts will increase the likelihood that the suits end up in the plaintiff's favor. The decision is growing in importance as 7 similar suits were filed over these last 4 months, responding to the summer's influx of damaging weather events. More cities and states are feeling emboldened to go through the process. As more suits come in, like the one Maui filed earlier this month, we're starting to see a more strategic argument develop. Instead of suing fossil fuel companies for negligence in regards to speeding up global warming, the recent suits have focused more on consumer protection laws. They argue that the fossil fuel industry misled shareholders by saying they were properly weighed the cost and benefits of their products when they weren't.
To explain this argument more, we need to go back to 2015.
That was when Insider Climate News published an investigative series, which was later nominated for a 2016 Pulitzer Prize for Public Service, revealing that Exxon knew since at least 1978 that burning fossil fuels would result in global warming. The Los Angeles Times also published a similar finding. Exxon's interest for preserving their bottom line drove them to conduct research ahead of the curve, and that same bottom line enticed them to keep what they found vague and downplayed.
Scientists hired by Exxon Again, Exxon's very own scientists were the first to present a series of groundbreaking papers explaining that burning fossil fuels will influence the climate as the carbon dioxide released will cause a greenhouse effect. So the higher-ups at Exxon chose to ignore the information and instead focus on growing the business. They did ask the scientists to keep looking into it. In 1982, their own scientists again came back, this time with more thorough research saying, yep, it was worse than they thought. Based on what Exxon was planning to do in regards to fossil fuel extraction would warm the climate, cause sea levels to rise, and increase deadly droughts. Humans will suffer effects which will be indeed catastrophic, so the scientists pitched a major reduction in fossil fuel combustion. If Exxon wanted to be innovators so bad, maybe they would have taken this moment to diversify the energy sector, invest in alternative energy sources, but instead they decided to lie. To you, to me, and to your mom.
Rather than acting immediately on their findings, they determined the last possible second they could wait before other people caught on to climate change. They used the American Petroleum Institute, API, right-wing think tanks, lobbying, campaign contributions, and their own climate alliance, called the Global Climate Coalition, to spread the message that climate change science was still very uncertain. In reality, the GCC was an alliance of some of the world's largest companies seeking to thwart government efforts to act on climate change. Some of Exxon's scientists purposely published studies that contradicted the scientific consensus that was beginning to grow. All the meanwhile, they quietly used the information of climate change impacts, such as sea level rise, to repair their own equipment. They even patented their own electric vehicles and bought the rights to battery designs, a topic for a whole nother video. The climate reporters also showed evidence that Exxon's fellow fossil fuel fiends, such as Texaco, Shell, and predecessors to Chevron, knew about climate change really early on too.
At this point, I probably sound conspiratorial, but check the links below. This stuff really happened.
Once the climate reporters published their series, a New York attorney general subpoenaed ExxonMobil for more documents and soon began the wave of these lawsuits against fossil fuel companies. Even still, Exxon and fellow fossil fuel companies continue to barely mention climate change at all.
Clearly, they aren't going to change their behavior until they're forced to.
This legal battle with big oil is often compared with the battle against big tobacco because in both cases, industry was ahead of the curve in studying the effects of their products, while meanwhile downplaying negative effects to the public. In the end, big tobacco was brought down through the combination of attribution science and historical data, a technique that is now being echoed in climate legislation. But just like tobacco litigation, it's a long process. It took 30 years to finally pin big tobacco down.
If you want to continue to follow the climate legal stuff, then please check out a news website called The Climate Docket, which covers everything that is currently going through the court systems relating to climate change. It'll be interesting to see how this lawsuit plays out, because if the Supreme Court decides that these kind of cases can be charged just on a state-to-state basis, then that allows for more states to make a bigger difference in changing the trajectory of the climate by suing fossil fuel companies. Remember, it is now a week before Election Day, so if you haven't already, please make sure that you submit a mail-in ballot or go in to vote. Be safe. On Monday, we'll cover the Biden plan for the climate and compare it with the Green New Deal to see what the similarities and differences are. And in addition to that, on Thursday, we are going to go and talk about our next chapters for the Climate Book Club. More information relating to that topic is below. I hope to see you there. And without further ado, have a great rest of your day. Remember to talk about the climate every day, and I will see you back here in the Beckosphere. Bye. If you have been here before, then you know that usually I like to try to post on Mondays, but as you can see here, I've been a little busy because my poor little boy, Rue, fell from the loft Yeah, graceful. And he tore 2 ligaments in his back right leg, and now he has to wear a cast for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So unfortunately, I've been a little bit busy with that because he has been in pain a lot, especially during the nighttime, and so I've been making sure that he's okay. So sorry I'm late, but life happens.